Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Buying a Home in The Hague. Also good to know I have a little cold, so I might cough a little bit, but I hope it doesn't bother you. Um, let's get started. So I'm Rick. I'm a housing specialist at Expat Housing Network. I'm Dutch. I live in Rotterdam, so I'm responsible for the region of South Holland, so Rotterdam, The Hague, and basically anything in between. I've lived in several countries like South Africa and Colombia. So just like you guys, I know what it is to go abroad and settle. What we'll be discussing today's first a short introduction. We're going to talk about market drivers, the topic of savings. Also, really important to know, right? How much do you actually need in order to be able to buy a property? Renting versus buying. Some people of you mentioned that the rents are too high. Well, I can understand. Three tips to win the market, and at the end, I will recap everything by going over the timeline and explain or how we potentially can help you with the buying process. First of all, at EHN, we believe that greatness is achieved in the agency of others. This is my team, the buying and selling team. So we have Giovanna and Larissa. They're both from Brazil and located in the south, so the Eindhoven and Maastricht area. And then we have Matt, Ludo, and Amy, and they're all located in Amsterdam, and therefore also responsible for this reason. And yeah, I already introduced myself. Um, Short introduction about EHN. So we're no traditional real estate agents. We help with buying, renting, letting, and selling. So we do more or less the same. But why are we no traditional real estate agent? One of the biggest differences is that we charge a percentage over the appraisal value. A lot of agents will charge a percentage over the purchase price as their fee. We said we do not want to give our clients the feeling that we just want to offer the highest price so we can earn the most. No, we base it on the value. So there's no incentive for us to make you pay more. So we really want the best deal for you. And as you could have seen, we know what it's like to settle in the country because we're either expats ourselves or we live in foreign countries. So, what is the added value of EHN? First of all, selling agents take our offers more seriously. In the cities we work, probably agents have worked with us before, so they know we did our check on our clients. They know it's not like that we pull out because we did a check on the property, on the documents, and it is the case that selling agents prefer to work with buying agents. And because of our network, we are also able to sometimes book viewings when for you guys it's no longer possible. It is the case that selling agents have special spots for their colleagues. So it could be that if you make the call, they say no, and if we make, they say yes. It's okay, you can still come. Then, very important. So, for those of you who already viewed the property, you might have seen that you receive a lot of documents once you view the property, and we help you to review those and understand those. Really, really important. But maybe the most important thing I think in the buying process is to have an understanding about the market value. We'll talk about this topic a bit more into detail later on, but really, really important. And then we will also make sure that you're well informed about all the rules, regulations, and restrictions related to a property, things like sub-occupancy obligations, ground lease, anything you can think of. And then last but not least, we will make sure that you guys don't make the same mistakes as we made. I think with the team, we've seen it all. So yeah, we are there for you to make sure you experience a smooth buying process. The market. So first, let's have a look at the market in general. So these are the latest numbers we have for the housing market in the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, last quarter, average purchase price was 422,000 euros. If you look at Q2, you see that it's an increase, right? A lot of people might have heard that the prices decreased a little bit. Well, you can see that in the graph below. And that was, let's say, from summer last year until the beginning of this year. and that had to do with the interest rate. In 2022 or beginning the 2022, the interest rates were really low, like 1.5%, which is almost for free. And then, of course, the interest rates went up, which also had an impact on the prices. But now, when the interest rate stabilized, you see that prices are starting to increase again. Well, the prices for new builds obviously are a little bit higher, and that is all to do with the quality of the property that you get and buying a new property. So if we then look at the Hague itself, there's some interesting numbers. So last quarter, 1,675 properties were sold. Not much compared to last year, an increase of 3%, a small decrease compared to Q2. Houses for sale, that was 1,646. And if you look at the difference compared to Q2, there's some of a difference, right? Almost or 11 less properties for sale. The average purchase price in The Hague is 420,000 euros. Still a little bit lower than last year. Not that much of a difference compared to Q2. And you see similar numbers for the average price per square meter. But then interesting is the sales time. So my phone starts to talk. So the sales time in The Hague, on average, it's 39 days. And this is really an improvement compared to the market a few years ago, right? You see that it's longer. What does it mean? In the current market, you have more options to, for example, schedule a second viewing or less properties with a deadline. And what I mean with a deadline, it used to be the case that almost every property, they scheduled all the viewings in, let's say, 1 week. And then they said, okay, you have until Tuesday, 11 a.m. to submit your final offer. Best offer wins, and that's it. And now you also have properties where there's no deadline and you can negotiate a little bit more, I would say. So for you guys as potential buyers, that is definitely a positive sign on the current market. So if we look at the market drivers, maybe it's good to know what caused the prices to increase, right? We saw that the prices went up pretty significantly over the past years, and there's some reasons why that happened. And the first ones are the fiscal benefits and the transfer tax exemption. What or the tax exemption? It all has to do with the transfer tax. So normally, when you buy a property, you have to pay transfer tax, which is 2% if you're going to live in the property yourself. If you're buying a property as an investor, this is 10.4%. But we have a rule that if you buy your first property, you are below the age of 35. And for this year, the purchase price is below 440,000 euros. Next year, it's up to 510,000 euros. You're exempt from paying the transfer tax. So that can save you a lot of money. The interest rebate. So the interest you pay on your mortgage is tax deductible. So you get back around 37% of your interest payments, which is a good thing. Then the next one, no capital gains. What do we mean by that? Yeah, of course, a lot of people made a nice profit on selling their property over the past years, and no taxes have to be paid over the profit that you make. Then we have the tax-free parent donation. There was a law that parents could donate around 100K to their children if they were going to buy a property without paying any taxes. Then this was last year. Then they lowered it to around 30K for this year, and it says ending because next year this is no longer applicable, and this is only for Dutch people or Dutch residents, right? So for people that pay taxes in the Netherlands. If you have family members abroad and they want to donate money to you, that is all tax free. So that is good to know and also positive for you guys, I think. Um, well, I already mentioned it, right? So especially a few years ago, the interest rates were extremely low, like 1.5%. which, yeah, of course, money is always for free. So, of course, a lot of people would like to borrow. Then the high rents, some of you mentioned it in the poll, right? The rents in the Netherlands are extremely high. And then, of course, people are going to look for alternatives. So what is the alternative of renting? It's obviously it's to buy. And then maybe the most important factor in the prices is the lack of supply. Prices are defined by supply and demand, right? Basic economics. There's just such a huge demand that the prices skyrocketed, I would say. And that is something we'll still see in the current market. Because if we look at the current market, the interest rates went up. I think at the moment it's, yeah, more or less around 4.5%. But if you look at it from a historical perspective, it's not even that high, right? Or low. I remember talking to my parents back in the days where they were like, where they had like interest rates of 8, 9%, and they were like, well, if it's around the 4%, fix it for as long as you can because it will never get lower. Of course, we know what happened, right? We have seen that it was around 1%, but from a historical perspective, it's definitely not a high rate. There's more active listings in the Hague. We saw that it's not that much, but in the general market, or in general in the Netherlands, there's a little bit more listings than before. Less overbidding. Uh, it doesn't mean that there's no overbidding, but luckily it's not as crazy as before, right? I already mentioned it. Like the sales time is a bit longer now, so less deadlines, which again for you guys is a positive sign on this market. And then we see it again, there's still a lack of supply. So we have, or hopefully we'll have a new government soon. Well, I don't think it will be soon, but let's stay positive. And they have a lot of plans, right? They want to build. I think everyone in the Netherlands agrees that they need to build more properties. But with everything going on in the world right now, the situation in the Netherlands in general, it's very difficult to make decisions and to actually, yeah, achieve those goals. I think that the goal is to build around 900,000 houses before 2030. Um, if I can be honest, I'm very curious, or I have my doubts whether they will reach those goals, because that means that they have to build more than 100,000 houses a year, and the max they ever built, I think, was around 70 or 80. Um, so yeah, that is interesting. And for you guys, the question might be: is it a good time to buy a property? Well, because of this huge demand for properties, I don't foresee a major decrease in values or something. Actually, more the other way around. I think it will increase a little bit further. So yeah, if I don't have a glazing ball to predict the future, if I had, I think I had a different job. But yeah, I think the sooner you can, the better. Then some final topics I would like to share with you. I'm gonna take a sip of my water. So the first one is about the self-occupancy obligation, um, and that is for people that are interested in buying a property as an investor. Please be aware that there is a self-occupancy obligation in A. That means that properties with a W or Z value up to 405,000 euros, you cannot rent them out, right? So really, really important to check that. And this was introduced by a lot of municipalities. The regulations differ per municipality to give starters a better chance on the buying market. Then the second one is about the NHG. What is the NHG? Maybe it's good to explain that first. NHG is a institute that helps you when you can no longer afford your mortgage. For example, when your partner passes away or when you lose your job, um, then NHG, together with the bank, will look into your mortgage and see if they can make it affordable for you. If, let's say, you have to sell your property with a loss, right? There's a loss on yeah, because the price decreased or whatsoever, then they will cover the difference for you. There's a lot of benefits, and this is also it reduces the risk for the bank, and therefore the bank is willing to give you a discount on your interest rate. So that is really positive. It lowers your monthly payments. In order to make use of NHG, you have to pay a one-time fee, which is 0.6% over the total mortgage amount. But if you can, definitely, or please make sure you make use of it. For this year, the threshold is 405,000 euros, but next year it will increase to 435,000 euros. So that's quite a significant amount, I would say. And then what will also change next year is the mortgage norms. So every year, I think the norms change a little bit. One thing that changed this year is that the second income will count for 100%, which was 90% last year. But next year there are some interesting things that will change. First of all, if you're buying as a single person, you can get an additional 16,000 euros if your income is at least 28,000 euros. And then what will also change is that the energy label is important for the bank. So properties with a D or C label, you can get, I think, 5,000 euros more. And with an A or B, you can get an additional 10,000 euros. So those things might have an impact on your mortgage capacity. So hopefully that will help you. Then renting versus buying. Of course, this webinar is focused on buying, but maybe it's good to understand the differences and also the financial impact of buying. So I have two properties. On the left, we have a property for a rent, 1,500 euros a month. And then on the right, we have a property with an asking price of 400,000 euros. Wow. I already mentioned, right, that the interest rates are a little bit higher, so the numbers, yeah, are not really accurate, but the principle is the same. So let's say we buy the property on the right. We have to overbid a little bit, and then calculate with an interest rate of 4.15, and that is with a discount of NHG. Then your gross payments per month would be 1,969. But because what I mentioned, the interest rate is tax, or the interest is tax deductible, your net payments would also be, let's say, 1,500 euros, right? So then you have two similar properties for the same price. Well, of course, you also have the closing fees. Well, let's say you buy your first property and you're below the age of 35, so then no transfer tax has to be paid. The notary, it's around 2K. A mortgage advisor, 2,500 euros. The fee of for EHN, if you, let's say, decide to work with us. The appraiser, technical inspector, a bank guarantee, and then the cost of NHG. Well, then the total closing fees would be 12,395 euros. And this is the amount you also need in savings, but I will show you in a bit. Then we say within 22 months, you've reached your break-even point. So what do we mean by that? Within 22 months, you've built up a similar amount in terms of equity as your closing fees, as your, wow, that's quite fast. But if we look at it from a 5-year perspective, I think it's even more clear. Because for the rent, let's say we rent this place for 5 years, we would have paid 90,000 euros. But if we buy this place, we would have paid 91,429. But out of the 91,000 euros, 37,000 euros is equity, right? So that is already a big win, I would say. And then with this example, we did not include any increases in terms of value. But if you look at the historical data of real estate in the Netherlands, I think as of World War II, it increased by an average of 5% per year. So yeah, especially if you're planning to stay here for the long term, buying is definitely a better option than to rent. Well, then this topic of savings, right? We already saw most of them, but maybe good to dive into a bit more into detail. So the transfer tax, what I said, 2% over the purchase price. Um, let's say you buy with a partner and you're buying next year, so then it's 510. Keep that in mind, 510,000 euros. Let's say you buy a property of 500,000 euros next year. It's your first property. You are 33, but your partner is 37. That means that only one of you has to pay transfer tax. So instead of paying, what is it, 10,000 euros, you pay 5,000 euros. Then, in order to make everything official, you have to go to the notary, right? So you need to sign the mortgage deed and the transfer deed. And in the third column, you see tax deductible. So good to know everything in the buying process that is mortgage related is tax deductible. So the mortgage deed speaks for itself. Yes, is tax deductible. Depending on the notary, between 700 and 1300 euros. Same for the transfer deed. Then, in order to secure a mortgage, you can either go to your bank or work with an independent mortgage advisor. My advice is always to work with an independent mortgage advisor. Why? If, let's say, you go to your bank, they can provide you with a few different types of mortgages. But if you go to an independent mortgage advisor, they can offer you a mortgage from 30 different banks. And every bank has its own policy. So one bank is a bit more strict on ground lease. One bank is a bit more strict on documents from the homeowners association. One bank is a bit more strict on self-employed people. A lot of different things to consider, but most importantly is that the rates differ per week. So it could be that this week ABN is the cheapest, and next week it is ING. Right. So in the end, I think a mortgage advisor is able to secure the mortgage that suits your profile the best. If you're interested in a conversation with a mortgage advisor, please put your email in the chat. Then I can give you the details of an advisor we have really good experiences with. Also familiar with experts and really good at what they do, and also not too. So yeah, what I said. If you're interested, please put it in the chat. Then the appraiser, or I forget the most important one, EHN. If you decide to work with us, we either charge you 0.75 or 1% of the appraisal value. I will explain our services at the end. The appraiser, so in order to secure a mortgage, the bank wants to know the market value, and the market value is officially defined by the appraiser um, between 7 and 900 euros, also tax deductible. Technical inspector, also really important, especially for a bit for properties that are a bit older. 465. The interpreter. So for people that don't speak Dutch, it is legally mandatory to have an interpreter present at the notary to translate the deeds for you, so you know exactly what you'll sign for. Around, let's say, 300 euros. The bank guarantee. So one of the articles in every purchase contract states that you need to provide a deposit equal to 10% of the purchase price in order to make sure you fulfill your obligations from the purchase contract. Of course, not everyone has a 10% deposit in savings. So what you can do is arrange a bank guarantee, so you don't have to transfer money, which typically is around 250 euros. And then last but not least, I already mentioned it, NHG. The cost of NHG are 0.6% over the total mortgage amount, also tax deductible. And yeah, again, if you can make use of it, please do so, because you will earn this back easily with the discount on your interest rate. All right, then three tips to win the current market. And the first one is value, value, value. I already mentioned in the beginning and I mentioned, talked about the market value, but I think I can explain you best by showing you an example. So here we have a property with an asking price of 395,000 euros. Now, let's say we really like it. So what we're going to do is a price research. And with the price research, we're going to do the same thing as an appraiser. So we look for similar properties in the same building, street, or area. And based on that, we can see what the market value is. And we found out that the value is higher. So it's 415,000 euros. But there's a lot of competition. You really like the property. So in order to make a winning offer, we offered 435,000 euros. What people will say is that you overbid by 40K, right? Which is around 10% uh, overbidding. What we say, well, that's not correct because the actual overbidding is 20K, right? So you pay 20K more than the value, so 4.8%. And keep in mind, the market value is the amount you can finance with your mortgage, right? That's the amount the bank is willing to give you. The 20K in this example, you need to pay from your savings. If, let's say, we have the same property, but it's listed by a different agent, now for 375, we did our research, right? We checked all the properties, and we know that the market value is 450. Again, we offered 435, so 20K on top of the value. People will say you overbid by 16%. Well, actually, there's no difference, right? It's the same property. It's 20K on top of the value. So always important to look at the value instead of the asking price, because the asking price is just an invitation for you to come view the property and make an offer. But it can also be the other way around, right? So this is a property with an asking price of 450,000 euros. Again, we like it, so we did our research, but we find out that the property was listed above the value, right? So the actual market value is 425. If, let's say, you don't have any savings, you don't want to overbid, and you're like, okay, I'm going to offer the asking price, which is 450, and you think, oh, I can finance it. Sorry, in this case, you do need to have 25K in savings, and you overbid by 5.5%. Right? So again, important to look at the value. Let's say similar situation. We did our research, market value 425, and that is also what we're going to offer. So instead of like paying less, you just buy on market value, which is the ideal situation. So again, I can't emphasize it enough. Please have a look at the value before submitting any offers, because yeah, it's really really important in this process. Then a winning offer. What is a winning offer? A winning offer is a good price, but not always the highest price. Because if we take the last example, let's say where the value is lower than the asking price, and let's say you offer the asking price, but you need 100% financing. Well, then the sellers might think, well, the value is a bit lower. I don't think the appraiser will put such a number on paper. So they will go for someone else. And that has to do with the second one, right? Security. It is really, really, really important to offer security to the seller. And you can do this in different ways. For example, if you have savings, right? If you don't need 100% financing from the bank, you can maybe lower your mortgage. Or if you work with a mortgage advisor, you can ask for statements they can write about your financial situation. Things like that really help to secure a place. Offer the least amount of hassle. Things you can think of is maybe the sellers they move back to their home country and they would like to sell all the furniture. If you rent a furnished place at the moment, and then it could be interesting for you to take over the furniture. What is also really important for a seller is the transfer date, right? Um, if let's say the sellers they bought a new build property that is only finished in, I don't know, 9 months, yeah, be flexible with the transfer date. um, I haven't met the first person that really likes moving, right? So yeah, as you can imagine, no one wants to move like 3 times in a few months. And the last one is offer a personal touch. Selling a property can be quite an emotional process, probably, or could be that memories have made in that specific house, children were born, I don't know. So for a seller, it can be really important to see like who's going to live in the property, what's the reason they like it, and how you're going to take care of the property. I won't say it's the most important thing, but definitely if let's say your offer is equal to another one, it will make a difference. Number three is to do your due diligence. And in order to do so, we have two different parties. We already saw them in the overview. It's the technical inspector and the appraiser. And my question to you guys is, do you book them before or after your offer is accepted? I will give you some time to put it in the chat. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Ibrahim thinks after, all right. Diana thinks before. Ibrahim was right. It's after your offer is accepted. And why is that? You do have to pay for them, right? If you remember the cost we saw in the overview, technical inspector is around 465, and appraiser, let's say 700-800 euros. Imagine if you have to book them for every offer you make, then the buying process can be quite expensive. And between getting your offer accepted and signing the purchase contract, normally you have around 10 days. And within those 10 days, you can have them over and view the property. So it's important that you book them as soon as possible because you want to have the results as soon as possible, especially with a technical inspection. Let's say you was at the property, you didn't see any crazy things, you checked the documents, but the inspector he found a leakage. Well, then this is the moment to renegotiate with the selling party, right? So you can either lower the purchase price or add a clause to the contract that they have to fix it, or if it's like really bad, you don't sign the contract. And with the appraiser, what I mentioned before, you really want to know the market value, the amount you can finance with the mortgage. So also important to have that before you sign the contract or within the cooling off period, because even when you've signed the contract, you have a cooling off period of 3 days in which you can dissolve the contract without paying a penalty. But if you would like to pull out after those 3 days, you need to pay a penalty equal to 10% of the purchase price, right? That's the bank guarantee I was talking about. That 10% the seller could claim if you pull out after those 3 days. So really, really important to book them as soon as possible so you have all the results, yeah, at least before the end of the cooling off period, so you don't have to pull out for any of those reasons. All right. Um, that was a lot of info. What I'm gonna do is just recap everything by going over the timeline and tell you how we as EHN potentially can support you with this process. So before starting the search, what I always recommend is to talk to a financial advisor. You do want to know how much you're able to borrow, but also, and maybe more importantly, is how much are you willing to spend on the mortgage. Life is already quite expensive nowadays. Every time I go out to a restaurant, bar, or even the supermarket, I'm like, wow, is it that expensive, right? So you might not want to spend every single penny on your mortgage. But once that's clear, you can start looking for properties. Funda is the main platform. Basically, all the properties are listed on there. Well, let's say you found something interesting, then you can share the property with us and we can help you with booking the viewing and attend the viewing with you. And during the viewing, it is really important to ask some critical questions to the selling agent, like what are the expectations of the sellers? Do you already have some offers in? What is the billing procedure? So is there a deadline, as you remember, or is it like negotiations? However, the most important thing I always say is that you need to feel at home, because with housing, it's always a feeling. What I see with most of my clients, often within a few minutes, they know whether it's a yes or a no. But if it's a yes, you come back to us, because the feeling itself is not enough. We have to look at the numbers and the documents. So that's the moment where we will start doing our researches. The first one is the price research. As I explained, really, really important to know the value before submitting any offers. And the second one is the property document review. And with the property document review, we'll basically check any documents related to the property, especially with apartments. You have a homeowners association, and what we check is if it's a healthy association. How is it managed? So things as what maintenance has been done, what maintenance is planned, do they have enough savings in order to cover those costs, or is it expected that you need to pay additional fees to maintain the building? But also from a construction perspective. So are there any issues with moisture, with foundations, anything you can think of? And then also from a legal perspective, right? The things I mentioned, like ground lease, self-occupancy obligations, anything you can think of. And then we'll schedule a call to research or to review the researches, and based on that, we can draft the offer. And we will also submit the offer for you, help you with the negotiations, and then hopefully we get the offer accepted. And there they are. Once the offer is accepted, we need to book in the appraiser and the technical inspector. We'll schedule some time to review the results. We'll review the purchase contract with you to make sure you're protected, all the clauses are correct. And of course, you understand what you sign for, because the purchase agreement will be in Dutch, unfortunately. And once you've signed the purchase contract, you have probably have all the documents you need in order to start your mortgage application. Depends a little bit on your personal situation, on your advisor. Normally, this will take about 4 weeks. And once your mortgage has been approved, well, then basically nothing can go wrong anymore. So that means you're really moving to, let's say, The Hague. Um, and then a week before the transfer, you'll receive a statement of completion from the notary. This is basically an invoice with all the final costs you have to pay. So, of course, the purchase price, which probably or mostly probably is financed by the bank, but the notary fees, your mortgage advisor, uh, our fee, you will transfer everything at once to the notary a few days before the transfer, and then the notary will make sure that everyone gets their part. And then we have the big day, the transfer date. So on that day, you will go to the notary to sign the deeds, make everything official. But before we go to the notary, we go to the property once more to do a final inspection to see if everything is in the same condition as before. A lot can happen in the 4 weeks, sometimes even a bit longer. I always give the example, maybe the sellers, they broke something with their goodbye party or with moving out. Well, that is something you did not sign up for when you signed the purchase contract. So then we inform the notary about this, and they will keep a certain amount in their account in order to fix it. But if everything is fine, you can sign the deeds and you are the proud owner of your property in The Hague. All right. That was it for so quickly about our services. So what I said, we have a few different services: smart, complete, and a new build. With the smart package, we're more like an online consult, so you will book and attend the viewings yourself. And then if you have this feeling, what I was talking about, if you would like to make an offer, you come back to us and we will help you with the property document review, price research, offer submission, negotiations, reviewing the contract, arranging all the third parties, and some transfer support. For this one, we charge a percentage of 0.75% over the appraisal value. With the complete package, we are physically there for you. So then we'll join you to the viewings, to the technical inspection, to the final inspection, and to the notary. And then, of course, the rest of the service is the same. And for those of you who are interested in new builds, that is a bit of a different process, but we can also support you with that. And then we have a fixed fee of 3,450. All right. Let me see. Are there any questions left in the Q&A? First question, do you also cover other cities near The Hague, like Delft, Rijswijk, and Voorburg? Yes, we do. So what I said, me myself, I live in Rotterdam, and we basically operate in the entire, yeah, part of South Holland, but also a bit further, like if you're closer to Amsterdam or to Utrecht, that is also possible. Yeah, let me see. Is there an upper limit for NHG? Yes. So what I said at the moment, the threshold for NHG is 405,000 euros, and then either the purchase price or the appraisal value uh, should be 405 or lower. But next year the threshold is 435, right? So that's 30K more than this year. And then again, either the purchase price or the appraisal value should be equal or lower to 435,000 euros. Let me see. Another question from Sumit. When you make the offer, how do you know if the price you offered is optimum? Yeah, so what I said, it's really important to have an understanding about the value, right? So um, yeah, we always do a price research. If you're not able to do that, yeah, please find another way to get an understanding, like check with agents, appraisers. So yeah, you're not in a situation where you make an offer which is way higher than the value, and in the end you cannot finance it. So yeah, really important. Another question, is it a must to book a technical inspection? Well, no. So a technical inspection is not mandatory, right? So that is only a condition you can add to your offer. If let's say you're buying a apartment which is built a few years ago, yeah, then I would say you can leave it out, you can skip it, because especially with apartments, like the outside of the building, that is maintained by the homeowners association, right? So that is not something you would have to pay for. Um, but if you're buying an older house or older apartment, I would recommend to include a technical inspection. Yeah. So it's up to you, but definitely not mandatory. Then Arthur, what is the best way to check the price of the market value ourselves? Yeah, what I said, you need to consult with experts, right? So with agents, appraisers, or yeah, if you really you can also try to do it yourself, right? If you go to the cadastre, you can find all the purchase prices you do have to pay for it, for every deed. And yeah, I think it requires some expertise, because yeah, it is some of a difficult process. Um, so yeah, it's you can do it, but it's difficult if you ask me.